ago that he had to undergo angioplasty. And thanks to his vegetarian daughter, he was introduced to physicians who suggested that he could reverse his heart disease with a vegan lifestyle, with a vegan diet. And it's good. I think if people understand that it's not weird to be a vegan, it's easier for them to make healthier choices for themselves. There are some others who choose to be vegan out of compassion for animals. And I don't think it's because they're squeamish. I don't think it's because they're wimps. I'll dare you to dare me. I will chop you down if you come in my way. I'm as cutthroat as it can get. But it's a choice. And I choose to live a more compassionate lifestyle. There are some others who choose to be vegan for environmental reasons. I remember this slogan. I think I can give credit to Peter for it, that there is no such thing as a meat-eating environmentalist. I won't claim to be vegan because of environmental reasons. When you fly, you put a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and I think about how just some years ago I flew 200,000 miles in a little over a year. I would be a hypocrite if I said that I was an environmentalist. There are benefits. There are benefits to eating lower in the food chain, less greenhouse gases. So that's part of the benefits of veganism. But why I choose to be vegan? Again, when someone were to engage me in conversation, I would tell them that I was vegetarian all my life, and not out of habit, not because I was from a family that was vegetarian and vegetarian was the only way to be. No such rules. I'm really pleased to have the two women in my life and the audience here, and I give credit to my mother, who is vegetarian. Now, she grew up in a family where it was okay to eat meat. Her mom would have memories of this, seeing a chicken, what do you call it, de-feathered, because her father would eat meat. And I'm willing to be corrected because this is going back a few decades. But then my mother took an aversion to eating meat as a child. And my father, on the other hand, is from a family that's as Brahmin as it gets, right? So she is a Sindhi, my father is a Tamilian, and he was the rebel. Began smoking when he was 15, drinking when he was 15, eating meat, the typical bad boy. They met and they decided that they would raise their kids vegetarian, or at least have a vegetarian kitchen. My two brothers chose to be meat lovers. I chose to be vegetarian. Go figure. But then you pick up things around you. I remember being influenced by this woman, bless her heart. She used to write a column in this magazine that I'm sorry to say is no longer around, the Illustrated Weekly of India. We used to get it at home in the mid to late 80s, and she used to write a typical column on animal rights. And I remember reading about, for instance, how the silver foil that we see on many milk sweets in India, known commonly as varak, is beaten that thin by being placed inside or within sheets of leather or some animal substance from the guts of sheep. And I swore off milk sweets. I would remind people that, yeah, some of it has to do with my childhood influences. I remember being in 11th grade and having a chemistry teacher tell me that, oh, the sugar that we take tends to be filtered through bone char. I said, oh, sugar, bones, I'm not touching sugar. And my family thought this guy's going to get crazy. And then when it came time to grad school and I was excited to get the opportunity to pursue graduate studies in the US, I remember being teased that, oh, he's the kind of guy that would go to the US and eat everything that moves. And it's a fashionable expression. People like to say, oh, I eat anything that moves. I went to the US, I went to Iowa, right? I would take long bike rides through Iowa and I would smell pig shit. Yeah, you have a lot of hog farms in the countryside, and I went to Iowa and I became vegan. Because I think it has to do with information. And this which made a lot of sense to me. So there I was, brought up not having to worry about where your food came from. Although I shouldn't be too hard on myself. Being the youngest of 3 kids, I used to be the one who would get pulled into the kitchen more often than my brothers would to help out when mom would need some help in the kitchen. But then when I had to get my meals fixed, I would just show up in the dining room, or I would show up in the dorm cafeteria. And when I was on my own in the US, I had roommates, but I would have to make meals too. And I would think, oh, where does this come from? I would look at these 5-pound jars of yogurt and think, what is carrageenan and what is xanthan gum? I knew about gelatin. I knew about gelatin while being a teenager in India. That if you don't know where gelatin comes from, please look it up, and you might choose never to have another spoon of jello. So I would make these calls, these toll-free calls to these companies and ask, oh, what is xanthan gum? Where does it come from? Does it have any animal origins? And I was lucky to be alive at a time when the internet was taking off. So I would just, and thanks to IVU, I remember IVU was one of the websites that I would look up to see whether this ingredient was potentially animal derived or not. So as I began thinking that, wow, so much of this comes from animals, okay, I can avoid this tub of yogurt, maybe I can try another tub that doesn't have gelatin, but doesn't have some other animal ingredient. And I was grateful for information. And around that time, my eyes were opened to the connection, the strong connection between the dairy industry and the beef industry. And I thought that I can't consciously contribute to this. So I gradually made I won't say gradually, almost overnight, made the decision to go vegan. This is part of my story, right? So many challenges and pitfalls on vegan path. There I was in a different society. I hated Midwestern winters. If I put on weight any time in my life, it was during the first winter. And here, going through an intense paleo program and trying to stay healthy, trying to stay sane. So let me talk about a few of those pitfalls. I should start with the social pitfalls. You surely heard people say that, oh, some people eat to live, I live to eat. It's nice when people like to call themselves foodies. And as human beings, we bond over a meal, over a shared meal. But when someone chooses to go vegan, they tend to be so sensitive about where their food comes from, about avoiding animal ingredients, that they cannot but bring it up. You cannot just say, oh, this has only 5% butter, let me eat this. Some people choose to do that. It said that Buddha would not refuse meat when he was served by people who loved and worshipped him. I couldn't be a Buddha. Right? And I think that I could have handled things more tactfully. And over time, I reflected on a couple of things. But first, one of them is, you heard this joke surely. What's the difference between an agnostic and an atheist? Agnostic is someone who says that, well, I don't know whether there is or there isn't a God, whereas an atheist is very sure that there isn't a God. The difference is that an atheist, an agnostic, gets invited to dinner. Because as an atheist, you're rejecting someone else's beliefs. So I felt that there was a similar connection here. As a vegan, you're rejecting someone else's food choices, and people get very defensive. And over time, I learned that, yes, I can be more considerate in how I describe my vegan practices. I can be just as respectful as others' food choices as they are of mine, as accommodating as they are of mine. And over time, I also came to reflect on one other thing. There is this analogy between people who are new vegans and people who are part of what you would call new money, right? New money flaunts. They don't know how to deal with money. And similarly, I think vegans, we get really carried away that, yes, you know, I've chosen this lifestyle, it's challenging, but I choose to be vegan. You can be kinder, you can be gentler, and I'm still learning. But yeah, I can think of many such pitfalls that I had to wade through. They may have come in the way of friendships getting closer. Other pitfalls, professional settings. One of the reasons I took this opportunity to talk here is because there is a stereotype that if you're vegan, you're living off the grid on some commune, and you're against technology, you're against civilization. And I'm living example that no, I'm as competitive, as ambitious as it gets. And I think that one can still go about on this more humane path. Let me not say humane, it sounds self-active. It's just this path. But then I just had to reflect on some of those stumbles early on. There was a time when I was getting out of grad school and I got invited to the final round of a job interview in Boston. Now, it wasn't just me. There were, I think, at least 3 of us who had made it to the final round. So it was part of, okay, you have the chops, the technical chops, you can deliver at our company. Let's see if there's a cultural fit. I learned later that there are ways to handle these things. I didn't then. So I didn't ask and plan ahead where's it going to be. They had this dinner at a steakhouse, 4-course dinner at a steakhouse. They wanted to show that, yes, we take care of our employees, our team members. Look how much fun we have. We have happy hours on Fridays. And I bombed, right? I wouldn't take alcohol. And then there was at least one course where there's just nothing that they could bring to my table. And you just have to think about the conventional wisdom, right? If you want to have a polite conversation, don't bring up 3 things: politics, religion, food. And if I have to bring up food, I have to do it carefully. And in time I've learned that if I have to have a client meeting, find out where it's going to be, see if you can make a call ahead of time so that someone who's going to wait on you knows that they can bring your food without drawing too much attention to your food. And so it doesn't become the conversation. You can focus on your meeting, your business meeting. Those kinds of challenges. And again, people not only bond over meals, they also decide, can this person fit into our company culture? If he has to wine and dine with clients, can he do that? You live and learn. Now it's not different being an entrepreneur, right? I call the shots. So, but I still have to be careful of this. Another set of pitfalls, and I thought I'll save the most important for last: health challenges. So you hear people talk about, as a vegan, you got to, it's a healthier diet. But what I think many activists forget, and I would like to speak to the many very thoughtful vegans in the audience. Yes, you want to make others go vegan, you want to make them switch to vegetarianism. But see, you show them this kind of picture and get them to think about the suffering of which they spare themselves aside. You show them videos of what happens inside factory farms, and if they have any humanity, they would have a negative reaction to it, and they'll say, okay, no, from tomorrow, Dr. Saravanan's kind mantra, I choose to be vegan. Right? It's easier to make the switch than to do it in a healthy manner. And if someone thinks, oh, I'm going to avoid this, they'll wonder, what do I fill my plate with? And I remember this anecdote, Paul McCartney sharing the decision that he and Linda McCartney made that, oh, there's this lamb playing in our gardens, and that's going to be dinner next week. No, let's not eat lamb anymore. And they couldn't figure out how to fill their plate with food. Many people, especially teenagers, especially young professionals, don't think about a healthy diet, and they become junk food vegans. I won't say that I was a junk food vegan, but there I was in my home stretch in my master's program, very intense program. I had a very difficult thesis advisor, and I had to finish my thesis that summer because I was accepted into a doctoral program at another university, and if my thesis didn't happen, I was not going to be able to begin the other program in time. And I remember the only thing that I ate that summer was, my roommates had left, by the way. They had gotten jobs, and I was just the one person in a shared apartment. I would work like a maniac, bicycle to a co-op in Iowa City, and get a fresh loaf of bread along with some fresh peanut butter, eat, run to the lab, in front of the computer all day and night. I don't remember eating anything other than bread and peanut butter. Like whole wheat bread, healthy. Lo and behold, yeah, sure, I got my research done in time, moved on to Ann Arbor. It catches up with you, right? I had stray days that fall, and I thought, okay, life is back on track. I escaped from the prison hole, but then I began to show symptoms of anemia. When people tell you take B12 supplements, I should be the poster child, right? I came down with a B12 deficiency in my PhD program, and it's not fun. So My nickname in college used to be a fusion of the word enthusiasm and Anil, right? My friends used to think that I had batteries in my butt, right? Run around with a lot of energy, and this was new to me. That was when I first started using an electric shaver because I didn't have the energy to wet my face, to clean a blade and move it across my face. I let my facial hair grow. I didn't have the energy to rotate the lines at night so that light doesn't come in from the light outside, right? That was anemia, and I didn't realize it. And I remember hosting one of my brothers over Thanksgiving in 1996, and he suggested, yeah, I should see a doctor. And I went and saw a doctor. He said he took some tests, and he called me back in. So when they call you back before your next appointment is due, you know that it's not good news. He said, come, we got to get you on these mega doses of B12 right away. Intramuscular B12 shots. And he said that we're not sure whether it's an intake issue or an absorption issue. So for the next several months, until your B12 levels are stable again, until your symptoms are behind you, you got to give yourself B12 through injections. And I got this for a few months, and I would give myself these injections for 1 month, once a month, for many months. It took me a year to get out of that pit. I wouldn't wish this on anybody, right? So please, if you know someone who's considering taking to vegan diet, 2 tablets a week, that's it, right? And I remember this. Tragic part is, I was aware enough that yes, if someone chooses to go vegan, typically they have reserves that last them for 3 years. And I thought, well, it's been a year, I should start taking some vegan supplements. I used to bake my bread at home, right? Vegan bread. Put flour into the bread machine and dough is made overnight. And I remember getting some nutritional yeast that had some B12, but too little, too late. And so avoidable, right? Cheap tablets. And I used to worry, well, the B12 tablets must be non-vegan, right? So I'm cheating as a vegan. The kind of games you play with your head. No, they cultured in the lab, bacteria, all vegan, plant-based. Yeah, you got to be careful about calcium also, right? If you're wondering, you don't know if anybody will come down with the calcium deficiency, right? Yeah, I've come down with the calcium deficiency, right? You got to be more careful about what you eat. That I was on my own for many years. Right now, I have it good. I have a sweetheart of a wife who makes sure you haven't eaten anything, shut the computer down, you got to have your breakfast, right? But then you make these difficult choices. Yeah, food can wait. So I came out with a calcium deficiency, and it turns out that I was deficient in calcium because I was low on vitamin D. Vitamin D being essential for the absorption of calcium. So one thing that I would ask all of you to do as a favor to yourself, you might think that you're not vegan, you're maybe borderline vegetarian. Please, as Dr. Saravanan said, so many of us, especially those of us with darker complexions, who don't process, who don't make vitamin D as easily in our body, go get yourself checked. Go do a full blood test, have all of your vitamin and nutrient levels checked. Any good local hospital will cost you what, 1,500 to 2,500 rupees, well worth the time and money. So again, simple things. Vitamin D tablets. Now, what I've learned is vitamin D2, which is more commonly derived from plants, is not as effective in improving your body's D levels. You need D3, and D3 commonly comes from the wool from sheep. Right? As vegans, we think, no, let's spare the lambs. But now, today, it's possible to get even D3 from plant-based sources. So no reason not to get that. You might wonder, so what does it mean? Goodness, he's gone through B12 deficiency, he's gone through calcium deficiency, he's gone through vitamin D deficiency. No, I don't need to scare anybody away. I'm just saying be aware, right? Knowledge is power. What you do with the knowledge is up to you. I'm sharing my lessons learned. And if you were to doubt this, I was vegetarian growing up, right? And I remember feeling some pressure from my weightlifting coach in university. I was captain. I went on to be the best weightlifter across in university competition. I was pretty fit by myself, and subscribe to this notion: sound mind and a healthy body. So I went, became a vegetable in the first couple of years of my class studies, but then recoverable. Right? Just make sure that you're eating well, exercising well. Now here I would say, do as I say, not as I do, because I still punish myself. I pull in all-nighters when I shouldn't be pulling in all-nighters. But if you think about it, that's how stable my body weight has been. And if it's been on the lower side, it was when I was ill for a year. And not just that, I'm still fit. If you don't believe me, I went on a bike ride a little over a week ago, and I realized that I had these shorts, these bellwether bicycling shorts that I bought in Iowa City in 1995. How many people do you know who still fit into clothes that they wore when they were 22, 19 years later? So I must thank my genes for it. In 2008, and I decided that I need to get some fitness goals again. And I took this one as a goal. Right? There is this US Marines physical fitness test, and I scored. I mean, you don't just go show up somewhere and someone tests you. You know what the test is. You got to run 3 miles in 80 minutes. You got to do 20 consecutive pull-ups. You got to do 100 crunches in 2 minutes, all within 30 minutes. Right? I just blew past them. So if someone tells you that no, you need to eat meat to get a killer instinct, I'll say, well, bring them to me. So look, you don't need to be vegan. You don't need to be a meat eater to have that killer instinct. Yes, and people ask me, so it keeps coming up, right? They just cannot comprehend. You don't eat milk, no butter, no ice cream, no cheese. So what do you eat? It's easier having this conversation in India because there's so much of a foundation in vegetarian cuisine. Take any regional cuisine. So I just say start with vegetarian and take out the ghee, take out the butter, take out the cream. So you shouldn't have that concern. It does get challenging on the road. So it takes some extra planning. Again, my life has been made easy. I used to do this so much, but then when we went on a road trip of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, my wife loved picking out vegetarian establishments. This was spring of last year. And even when we make road trips over here, it's not hard, people. It's just not hard. You got a lot more information on nutrition in the entire previous talk, and I can never do justice with one slide, but look, there's enough information online. You go to qualified nutritionists, they can give you some wisdom on how do you go about making healthy transition. And that's why you don't need to become an overnight vegetarian. You don't even, look, you don't need to become a vegetarian. Right? There's such a thing as meatless Mondays. Get one a meal of meat in a week. Gradual changes, little steps. That's what I would recommend. And I'll leave you with these words. Don't just stay hungry, stay foolish. Right? This is an entrepreneur that many of us respect. Stay healthy too. Thank you.